Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of August 8th to the 14th, and we got 4 stories to cover for this week, though. Majority of these will be Nintendo-related stuff, though, or games possibly coming to the Nintendo Switch, although there's one in particular that basically is going to be coming to other platforms, but I'll be focused maybe a little bit more on the Switch one, though, and basically the story we'll be covering are rumors about a remastered of the Grand Theft Auto games, possibly coming to multiple platforms, including the Switch. Some like to dub this the Grand Theft Auto 3 trilogy, though. Nintendo had their Indie World Showcase, though, with some games that were great that they showed, and some that I felt like I really wish that they had it on the Indie World Showcase. Rumors about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Darksiders 3 apparently got confirmed for the Nintendo Switch, though. And if you're interested in what I'm talking about, I have links in the description of where I got some of the source of the information, though. But before we get started, though, we'll start first with the quick My 2 Cent stories that kind of caught my attention, though, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details. The first one is that we learned that Konami is teasing some new announcements at Gamescom 2021, which I'm not really expecting much, though, given where Konami is now, though. They might have something out there. They may have something for the Switch. They may have nothing at all, so we'll have to wait and see, but my expectations aren't high, at least with Konami, though. We also learned about the possibility of a file size for the upcoming Halo Infinite, and let me get it out there. As it's been reported that supposedly the file size is going to be around 97.24 gigabytes. Now, it's worth pointing out neither Microsoft or 343 Industry has not confirmed this at this time. We don't know if this is accurate, and if it is, we don't know if it's basically both the game and the multiplayer, or if it's just multiplayer only, or the game or the campaign only. So nothing has officially been confirmed at this time, though, but assuming this is true in any way, though, it's kind of big, maybe not as huge as, say, like what we see with like Call of Duty Warzone, which eats up a lot of space, though, but pretty big nevertheless, though, and I would probably recommend those to try to get some storage space for your Xbox Series S or X, particularly the S, though. Especially, you might want to save up money on that Seagate 1 terabyte SSD card, though, to plug into your Xbox Series S and X. We also learned that Sony has now officially acquired Crunchyroll, their streaming service that shows off the latest animes and so forth. So it's going to be interesting to see what Sony does with Crunchyroll, though. Some people were worried that it will go the route like what we've been seeing with PlayStation, dumbing down some of the content to a certain degree and all that, or censoring, though, but time will tell if that truly does happen or not. But as of right now, though, Sony has now officially acquired Crunchyroll, so they own Crunchyroll, and of course Funimation as well. We also learned that apparently Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, if I'm saying the name correctly, though, has now officially been optimized for the Xbox Series S and X. Let me see right here. And according to what we've heard so far, there will be different depending on which system, what mode you play. This will offer certain things. So, for example, on Xbox Series X, if you turn on performance mode, the resolution could go up to 1080p at 120 frames per second, or HZ, though. If you turn on resolution mode, you'll get dynamic up to 4K at 60 FPS. But if you turn on enrich mode, which is the only mode that has ray tracing, though, you could get a dynamic up to 4K at 30 FPS. Over at the Xbox Series S, though, if you turn on performance mode, you'll get full HD at 60 FPS. If you turn on resolution mode, you'll get dynamics up to 1440p, but at 30 frames per second. And last but not least, if you turn on enrich mode on the Xbox Series S, you will get full HD and ray tracing, but you will get it at 30 FPS. So different graphical options available for those who are going to get the game on Xbox Series X or S, or if you already have the game, though. If I had to choose which of the resolution, though, I would go with the one with the 60 FPS, though. I prefer a higher frame rate over graphical bells and whistles, but everyone has their own different preference and taste, though. We also learned that Microsoft hold their they hold their indie event, basically showing off what games are available for their upcoming system. Most of them are going to be available on Game Pass, though, although some of the games they kind of announced, I did see it on the Indie World Showcase, though. One game in particular I think that they recently has just been released on the Xbox Series S and S, and it's available on Game Pass, is Hades, though. I have that on the Nintendo Switch, though. I thought it was a good game last year, though. It's worth taking a look at, especially if you like roguelike games in particular, though, and you do get a little bit of somewhat of a Rygar and the old God of War vibes to it to a certain degree, though. But that indie game has won a lot of awards and certainly has gotten a lot of attention, along with games like Dead Cell as well. So that's one I definitely would recommend folks check out, though. As far as which system, which version to get, depends on what your system of choice is. I have it on the Switch, so I'm happy with that version. But if you have an Xbox Series S or X or PS4 or PS5, it's worth checking out. And it's also on Game Pass as well, so that's something that Xbox owners should take into consideration. We also learned that basically a brand new studio is being developed, and interestingly enough, it's being developed by the person who worked on Spec Up the Lines and the guitarist from the group 9 Inch Nails. And that's going to be interesting to see what kind of game that they are going to be working on. I'm very curious to see what it is, and of course what systems it will be going to. We also learned that a new South Park game is in development. I believe this was from last week, but it will also be in 3D, so it's going to be a bit different than what we've seen from Ubisoft, though. I'm curious to see if Ubisoft is still handling this game or not, though. Assuming if they are handling it, though, I have some concerns given the direction Ubisoft has been going lately, especially with the whole, pushing, monetization, online, always online, that kind of approach. So I'm a little concerned, especially with Ubisoft directly involved into it, though. But we haven't seen the game yet, so time will ultimately tell, though. We also learned that more Fallout is emerging from Activision Blizzard, which has now indicated that 3 of the developers, one who has especially worked on Diablo 3, have now stepped down or have departed Activision Blizzard following basically given really no reason, though, but many are speculating it has to do with the fallout Activision Blizzard has been facing, though, which has been really very damning to the company indeed. And last but certainly not least, and this one has to do with on the movie side, though, it is reported that one of the former people who were part of Jackass, Bam Margera, is suing Johnny Knoxville and Paramount basically over the upcoming movie Jackass Forever. Supposedly the claim is that they are using some of the stuff in the movie, or that there was issues with him and all that stuff. Although this has been gone back and forth. He's claiming that Paramount and Johnny Knoxville and the Jackass crew has been doing this, while others are claiming that Bam Margera has been sort of in a downward spiral ever since, Ryan Dunn passed away and all. So there's a lot of issues going around with this, though. It's unclear how much of an impact this will have with the upcoming 4th Jackass movie, Jackass Forever, whether that will hit theaters or not. So far, nothing seems to indicate that there's anything preventing the movie from being released in theaters. So time will tell whether this gets resolved out of court or whether this goes ahead and all. So we'll have to wait and see how this all plays out in regarding the whole drama surrounding Jackass Forever. Okay, with the quick My 2 cent part now done, we'll get started with our first story. And this one has to do with, believe it or not, Darksiders 3, and particularly now hearing that it's coming to the Nintendo Switch. Now, as some of you may remember, last week, let me just something. Okay, sorry about that. I saw something, but anyway, last week though, I reported in a quick My 2 cent, and I was talking about basically a Russian retail site basically had a listing for Darksiders 3 for the Nintendo Switch. Now, at the time, though, I wanted to be very cautious about this because we've seen retail listings before. Sometimes they are way off, but sometimes they are in the right and all that. And so I wanted to be very cautious about it. Not to mention, I remember hearing around the time when the Switch launched, though, that some developers, especially those who worked for THQ Nordic, were not pleased with some of the power with the Nintendo Switch, though. But as the Switch sold more and more, we started to see developers start making attempts to put some of their games on to the Nintendo Switch. We've seen that with THQ Nordic, whether it's Saints Row the 3rd or 4th, to basically Kingdom of Amalur's Re-Reckoning, Red Faction Remars Edition. We just recently had Destroy All Humans and all. And so now it turns out to be that Darksider 3 has officially been confirmed for the Nintendo Switch. In an article, let me get that out. There we go. In an article posted by Screen Rant, though, it reads that, quote, publisher THQ Nordic and developer Gunfire Games will finally bring Darksiders 3 to the Nintendo Switch on September 30th. Released in November 2018, Darksiders 3 dropped players into the role of Fury, the third of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Gunfire Games supported the action RPG for a while after its release, unleashing 2 separate post-launch DLC expansions. Soon enough, Switch fans will get to explore it for themselves. So, come September 30th, Nintendo Switch will finally have a chance to get their hands on Darksiders 3. The RPG Switch version bears a $39.99 US dollars, $40 to be exact, price tag, and slash to launch digitally and at retailers. THQ Nordic revealed in a press release. Plus, in addition to the main game, the package will also feature Darksiders 3 2 DLCs offering: Keepers of the Void and the Crucible, or Crucible. Apologize, I'm not saying the name correctly, though. So anyway, it's sort of interesting that they are bringing this one over here, though. I was a little curious if this game would ever come over to the Nintendo Switch. As I mentioned earlier, some of the developers spoke out about the power of the Nintendo Switch and weren't happy about it. Basically, the third game sort of got a mixed response, as some people weren't happy with the direction the game was going. Particularly, some felt it took like a Souls-like approach, and not everyone was pleased with that. But in either way, the game did very well, and I thought it was a good game when it came out in 2018 for the PS4. And to hear it now finally coming to the Nintendo Switch is nice, which means that all the Darksiders games up to this point have been released on the Nintendo Switch. Remastered Edition, I think the Definitive Edition, Darksiders 2, which is my personal favorite, though, as that's more of as I like the Zelda and Diablo approach. Darksiders Genesis, and now Darksiders 3. So it's very nice that the game is coming over to the Nintendo Switch, but I am curious about a couple of things, though, and that is, how well will the game run on the Switch? How well will it look on the Nintendo Switch? Are the DLCs in the cartridge, or is this going to be one of those we'll have to download download the DLCs, or is it one of those we have to download, the rest of the game, as we've seen other publishers have done situations like that before on the Nintendo Switch. So there's still a lot of questions to ask about how this one is going to play out, but overall, though, I would say I am very pleased to hear that Darksiders 3 is coming to the Nintendo Switch. I am curious to see, however, if a Darksiders 4 ever happen. And if it does happen, though, it would be interesting if Darksiders 4 ever makes its way over to the Nintendo Switch. But either way, I'm glad that Darksiders 3 is coming to the Nintendo Switch nevertheless. Okay, excuse me. Okay, we'll take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2. And this one has to do with rumors about the possibility that a third Xenoblade Chronicles game could be happening. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at a rumor that has recently popped up regarding Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, the Xenoblade Chronicles series has sort of had an interesting history and all that stuff. To give a quick cliff notes on the situation, it was part of Operation Rainfall to bring 3 JRPGs over to the Wii. At the time, Nintendo said they had no plans, but then eventually they started to bring the games over, with Xenoblade Chronicles being released only at GameStop or at the Nintendo World Store, to Xseed handling the last story, and then Pandora's Tower being released pretty much at the tail end of the Wii's life cycle, though. But Xenoblade Chronicles, the series, though, has sort of been one that certainly has, out of all 3 of the Operation Rainfall games, one that has gotten the most attention, though. Not only have we seen the first one ported over to the Nintendo 3DS, though, but we also got a port on the Wii U, which is Xenoblade Chronicles X, a game that I really think Nintendo and Monolith should port over to the Nintendo Switch. I think a lot of people, that game is long overdue to bring over to the Nintendo Switch and all. But anyway, getting back on point, though, we've also had, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as one of the launch titles for the Nintendo Switch, and of course in 2019, I believe it was in 2020, we had basically a remake of the first game, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. So apparently the series has done well enough for Nintendo. It may not be on the same level as, say, Mario or Zelda or even Pokemon for that matter, but nevertheless, it has definitely found its audience, though. And given how well the series has done so far, it isn't really surprising to hear reports about the possibility of a Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, at this point, up to this point at least, nothing has been officially confirmed or anything like that. But 2 interesting stories popped up, though, that got people looking to see, or at least got some people looking, though, over the fact that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 may be happening, though. The first one started out when one of the voice actors for one of the characters in the original Xenoblade Chronicles and Definitive Edition believes a 3rd game was happening, though. In 2 of the articles from Nintendo Life, this one was reported this week on Monday, when one of the actors who played basically the voice of Melania, basically by the name of Jenna Coleman, who also appeared on TV shows like Doctor Who and Victoria, made some interesting comments. The first one was, quote, about acquiring the role of Melia. She said, quote, "I think it was pre-Doctor Who and everything. It was through my voiceover agent, and I did it. God, when it was the first game, like 10 years ago. It was a long time ago anyway. I did it pre-Doctor Who days, and then when they did the second one, they just asked me to come back." And then after a brief pause, she went on to say that she thinks another game is on the way, eventually noting that she perhaps should have said that out loud. She said, quote, "I think they're going to do another one. Common knowledge, don't know. Yeah, I think they're going to do another. Don't know if I'm allowed to say that." So at the time, though, it sort of gave a hint of the possibility of a 3rd one, but nothing was officially confirmed, though. However, others have picked up on it, and one has started to come out in terms of a rumor about the possibility that this could be true. Now, granted, it is a rumor, but it is worth taking this with a grain of salt. That being said, though, I could see a 3rd one happening. Anyway, the other article from Nintendo Life reads that, quote, "Monolith Soft has been expected to expand on the Xenoblade Chronicle universe for some time now, with a 3rd major release, and yesterday it was discovered the voice actor for Melania, Jenna Coleman, may have confirmed a new entry during an interview dating back to June. If her own comments weren't convincing enough, Fanbyte news editor and occasional industry insider Imran Khan has now chimed in with his own information, confirming the game is in development. Here's what he has to say. Quote, "Coleman's quote has caused rumors to stir over the weekends of a new Xenoblade Chronicles currently in development. According to our sources here, we can indeed confirm that to be the case. Moreover, the game is near its final stage of development, but its release date may be held back for any number of reasons." One of the things they've pointed out is, of course, COVID-19 could be one reason, which I would say I wouldn't be completely surprised by that. Anyway, moving on. Khan further explains how the 3rd Xenoblade Chronicles games will be a direct sequel to the 2nd title and shares some details about the story. Here's what he has to say. Quote, The ending of the trilogy takes place in the far-flung future with a few returning characters who have long outlived their human counterparts from both Xenoblade Chronicles and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This is why Coleman, who played Milana, M-E-L-I-A, apologize, I'm not saying the name correctly, will be aware of a third game as her character is returning, and she's more than likely have recorded voice acting for it. The game was set to be revealed earlier this year, according to Khan's sources, but got delayed due to the pandemic and difficulty optimizing the game for the Nintendo Switch. He concludes by, quote, "The game's aiming for more character models on screen at once than any previous title, according to both playable accounting for both playable characters and enemies. The same story from Fanbyte said if all goes well, the third entry could be released as soon as the first half of next year. Imran Khan also previously mentioned how the rumored Metroid Prime trilogy for Switch has been long done. Now, obviously, nothing is officially confirmed, though. We haven't heard anything from Nintendo or Monolith Soft at this time, so this should be taken with a huge grain of salt. That being said, though, we have heard how Monolith has been on a hiring spree lately, though, so it is possible this could be one of the games they are working on. I do believe they are working on the Breath of the Wild 2, or whatever it's going to be called, though. I don't think it's going to be called Breath of the Wild 2. I think it's going to be called something else, though, but we'll have to wait and see. But a third entry I could definitely see happening, though. If it does exist, when could they announce it? Well, I mean, they could shadow drop it and announce it for... I mean, they could, I won't say shadow drop, I would say they could save the announcement for next year and sort of shadow drop it and all. They could possibly announce it during a Nintendo Direct. There are rumors going around of a possibility of a Nintendo Direct in September, though, so there is that possibility, though. But they might be waiting until after, or they could just be waiting until after the holidays and all. So we'll have to wait and see right now. So overall, obviously, this is a rumor, so a grain of salt should be taken, though. But I certainly wouldn't rule out the possibility of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 happening, though. I do hope it happens, though. I would love to see a third entry into the series. And although I'm beating the dead horse saying this, though, I really think they should port over Xenoblade Chronicle X over to the Nintendo Switch. I think they're running out of what Wii U games they could bring over to the Switch, and I think this is one that is long overdue for the Nintendo Switch. And who knows, maybe a Xenoblade Chronicles X2 could actually happen one day. But time will ultimately tell, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 3. And this one has to do with Nintendo showing off their Indie World Showcase that they had this week. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be showing off Nintendo showing the Indie World Showcase this week, where we take a look at some of the games that they are showing, though. Some games they showed won't be out until maybe a little bit later this year, some next year, and some of them are kind of out right now, though. Now, I did get a chance to watch it, though, and it was basically, from what I understand, 20 minutes long, and I will say some of the games they showed off were actually very impressive indeed, including one in particular. I'm glad it's coming to the Nintendo Switch, but sadly we'll have to wait until next year for that one. So in terms of what they showed off during the from the Indie World Showcase, they had Astroneer, Astroneer, Axiom Verge 2, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, Boyfriend Dungeon, Curious Expansion 2, Eastward, Far Challenging Tide, Gang Beasts, Garden Story, 100-Day Winemaker Simulation, Islanders Console Edition, Loop Hero, Lumberjack, Metal Slug Tactics, Necroboss, Necrobarista, Final Pour, Shovel Knight, Pocket Dungeon, Slime Rancher, Portable Edition, Tetris Effect Connected, and Totem, though. So these were the games that they showed off during Nintendo's Indie World Showcase for this week. As far as what games sort of interest me the most, I would say the ones that really caught my attention were Axiom Verge 2, though, the sequel to the first one. I'm very glad that that one is being released, I believe, today for the Nintendo Switch. For what I understand, there is a physical version, but that won't be out until a little bit later, so I might wait for the physical version, though. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk looks actually really neat. That one looks really, really neat. I'm definitely getting a Jet Set Radio vibe or Jet Set Radio future on it, though, and I'm hoping it convinces maybe Sega to actually do another Jet Set Radio game. But for the time being, though, we got Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. I'll see how that one plays out as well. I believe it's a timed exclusive on the Switch for the time being, but it is going to appear on other systems. Same with Axiom Verge 2, though. Other ones that caught my attention were Eastward, though. I've heard some things about that. I would have to give that one a go when that one comes out, though. Islanders Console Edition, that one looks really neat, at least from my opinion. It reminds me a little bit of, the Sims games like SimCity and all that. Seems to be taking a different approach, and I also like the idea that's somewhat like roguelike, where if you've done all what you can on the island, you can explore and go to the next island and so forth. So that one looks really, really interesting. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that one. Metal Slug Tactics, that's the one I've been looking forward to, and here that finally comes in the Nintendo Switch is definitely nice. I'm a big fan of the Metal Slug series. I love the 2D run and gun shooter series from SNK, though. It's sort of interesting that they're taking more like a tactical approach instead. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, in some ways, like the approach similar to what Disgaea is, to even Fire Emblem to a certain degree. So I am very curious to see how this one plays out, though, but that is definitely high on my list, though. Sadly, that won't be out until next year, which is a bit of a bummer indeed, though. The Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, that one looks very interesting, though. I'm very curious to see how long Yacht Club can, milk Shovel Knights to death and all that. Not that I'm saying that's not a bad game. It isn't, though. It's just that they're really pushing with Shovel Knights indeed, though. And I'm very curious to see how this one will play out. And, of course, Tetris Effect Connected, though, that one definitely is on my radar, though, as well. Interesting to hear that one is cross-play or cross-platform in general. So that certainly is nice. So they certainly had some interesting announcements, though. If there are two announcements that I felt like would have been nice if they had announced it during the Indie Showcase, the two big ones for me would have been that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game that's being developed by the same folks who did Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, though. We know it's coming to the Nintendo Switch. I don't think we have a release date at this time, but I'm hoping we get one soon. It would have been nice to hear a release date for that one during the Indie World Showcase, though. And one that I think a lot of people would have loved to see, though, but sadly was not shown during the showcase, was Hollow Knight's Silk Song. I think that was the one that a lot of people were hoping that Nintendo would show, or excuse me, what should have been showed during the Indie World Showcase, but sadly that wasn't the case. We don't know if the game's in development for the Switch or not, though, but I think that's one game a lot of folks would have loved to see shown during the Indie World Showcase. But overall, though, I thought this was a very good Indie World Showcase that Nintendo had. There were certainly a lot of games that certainly caught my attention, Metal Slug Tactics being the big one for me, though, being sort of a big fan of the Metal Slug series in general. But I will admit there are some games that I would have liked to hear them announce, like the Ninja Turtles and Silk Song, and some games are like, I'll consider it, getting it at some point, though. But some of these games I might consider downloading, or might want to wait to hear if, say, like, Limited Run Games is going to do a physical release. I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for that if that happens, though. But overall, I thought this was a good Indie Direct, though. Definitely like some of the games they announced, though. There weren't really any big surprises, like compared to one when they announced Cuphead was coming to the Nintendo Switch, but still some pretty good games that they showed off during the Indie World Showcase, nevertheless, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and this one will be rumors that remastered games of Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas could be in the works and could be coming to multiple platforms, including the Nintendo Switch. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at rumors going around that a remastered versions of Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas are in the works. So, now, everyone knows how popular Grand Theft Auto 5 is. The game has been printing money ever since the original one came out back during the PS3 360 era. It was ported over to the PS4 and Xbox One, and we are planning to see one for the PS5 and Xbox Series S and X. Not to mention the popularity of GTA Online is though. But the series got it started back during the original PlayStation 1 era with a more of a top-down view, though. Basically, before it made the jump in around 2001 or 2000, when it made the jump to the PlayStation 2 under the name of Grand Theft Auto 3. And since then, the series has sort of taken off with several entries during the PS2 era, such as basically Vice City and San Andreas. They would also be ported over to the original Xbox, and would also make its way over to PC and even mobile devices, though. But as far as Nintendo goes, Grand Theft Auto has sort of been iffy at best, at least on the Nintendo systems. While they have appeared on Nintendo systems, just not on the same level as, say, the PS2 or the Xbox, though. I believe the original one was ported over to the Game Boy Color. Grand Theft Auto would also be ported over to the Game Boy Advance under the name Grand Theft Auto Advance, and it would also see an entry on the Nintendo DS called Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars, which would release around the same time Grand Theft Auto 4 came out. Although the game did get high reviews, Chinatown Wars, though, it didn't sell as much on the DS as many people had hoped for, as that game would also later be ported over to the PSP, though, which also saw two other entries under the name of Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories indeed. Well, now a report, at least coming from Kotaku, though, assuming their information is correct, seems to indicate that not only are they remastering these games, but they're going to bring it over to the PS4, the PS5, the Xbox One, the Xbox Series S and X, mobile devices, PC, Stadia, yes, Stadia, and the Nintendo Switch. According to some of the comments mentioned on Kotaku, it reads that, quote, according to these sources, Rockstar is actively developing remastered versions of Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. They point out that the source they had has a reliable track record that has alerted updates to GTA Online and Red Dead Online weeks or, if not, months in advance. Anyway, continue on. It reads that all three games are being remastered using Unreal Engine. They don't mention which one, but I'm going to assume most likelihood it's Unreal Engine 4. And will be a mix of new and old graphics. One source who claimed to have seen a snippet of the game in action said that the visuals reminded them of a heavily modded version of the classic GTA titles. The UI for the games are being updated too, but it will retain the same classic style. No details were shared about the gameplay, but Kotaku has been told these remastered titles are trying to stay true to the PS2 era GTA games as much as possible. Sources confirmed that Rockstar Dundee, a Scottish outpost and one of the newest studios at the company, is leading the charge on developing the remastered game. Another source explains that the studio is heavily involved in not just the remaster, but is even helping Rockstar on developing the next-gen GTA 5 ports that are due out later this year. This lines up with information I have heard last year after the studio was purchased by Rockstar Games. Before becoming Rockstar Dundee, the studio was Riffing Games and had previously worked on Crackdown 2, Crackdown 3, and assisted with development on the Master Chief Collection. Plans around these remastered GTA titles have shifted quite a bit over the last year as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. They might continue to do so until things are officially announced. Originally, it seems that these re-releases were going to be packaged together and given to players who purchased the upcoming next gen of GTA 5 and GTA Online as a sort of a bonus or a thank you gift from Rockstar. Then plans changed, and the Remastered trilogy was scheduled to release earlier this year. However, plans have changed again, and now the remastered titles are planned to launch around late October or early November for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, Switch, PC, Stadia, and mobile phones. It appears that the PC and mobile ports might slip to next year as Rockstar's focus on developing the console port first. While some might have expected Rockstar to space these releases out, if not release them on each game's retrospect 20 years anniversaries. Sources told me that this isn't the current plan. Instead, it seems all 3 games are to be released in one collection package that may only be sold digitally. For fans who are more interested in other classic Rockstar games getting remastered re-releases, sources tell me that Rockstar has planned to develop a new port of games like Red Dead Redemption, but the future of these remastered games depends on how well these eternal re-releases sell. So, if what Kotaku is saying is true, it does sound like a lot of these games are the Grand Theft Auto 3 trilogies are being remastered, and we could see them sometime in the fall, though. I am very curious to see how well these games will run on the Nintendo Switch, though, especially considering we're hearing it's running on Unreal Engine. And I'm also curious to see exactly if there's going to be any change to some of the gameplay mechanics, because what might have been okay when these games originally came out, GTA 3 in 2001, GTA Vice City in 2002, and GTA San Andreas in 2004. What might have worked back then may not work as well as today, as some of the mechanics might be viewed as being a bit dated compared to some of the mechanics of today. So I am a little curious to see if there is going to be some update to some of the gameplay mechanics for the game and all. But to hear the fact that these the Grand Theft Auto 3 trilogies are being remastered is certainly interesting, and I would be also interested to see how well these games do and whether or not that means that a remaster of Red Dead Redemption could truly happen. Although I don't know how much they could do if they remastered that game in particular, but still, nevertheless, it will be interesting to see how well these games do, if assuming these rumors are true. And one last thing, though, is that if the game does well, especially on the Nintendo Switch, even if it's digital only, if it does well enough, I do wonder if this opens the possibility of maybe something like GTA 4 making its way to the Nintendo Switch, or even GTA 5. I know some people will think that's unlikely, but hey, GTA 5 started out on the PS3 and Xbox 360, so it's possible they maybe just port maybe that version over to the Nintendo Switch and add some updated features that were in the PS4 or the Xbox One, or even some of the updates maybe in the PS5 or Xbox Series S and X, minus some of the graphical things though. But it's a possibility. We've seen impossible ports come to the Nintendo Switch, so I can't completely rule that out at all. But time will ultimately tell if that truly happens or not. So overall though, I'm still going to take this with a grain of salt. I still want to hear official confirmation though, but I certainly am not opposed to the idea of a remaster of Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, or San Andreas being done, especially if the games do come over to the Nintendo Switch. Hopefully it's not the 360 version, because from what I've heard, not everybody was happy with that version, to be exact though. Okay, this concludes It's My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Darksiders 3 finally coming to the Nintendo Switch? Are you looking forward to picking that game up, though? Or are you happy with the version you have at home, whether it's on the PS4 or the Xbox One or PC for that matter, though? What are your thoughts about rumors about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 being in development? Do you think this rumor is true? Do you think that we could see Xenoblade Chronicles 3 next year, possibly? Would you be looking forward to playing a third entry in the Xenoblade Chronicles series, though? And do you think it's high times for Nintendo and Monolith to bring Xenoblade Chronicles X over to the Nintendo Switch? What are your thoughts about this week's Indie World Showcase? Did you like what they showed at the Indie World Showcase? Did you not like what you see, though? Are there any particular games that they showed off that caught your attention, like Axiom Verge 2 or Metal Slug Tactics or Islander Console Edition in any way? And what are your thoughts about these rumors about Grand Theft Auto being remastered, particularly Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas? Are you glad that, do you believe this rumor is true? Do you think these three Grand Theft Auto games should be remastered in any way? And if the rumors are true, which system would you pick it up on? Will you pick it up on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, Switch, PC, mobile, or Stadia to be exact? Do you think these remastered games will make their way over to Game Pass in any way? And if the games do come to, and if these rumors true and the games do come to Nintendo Switch, do you think this can open the door to the possibility of something like, say, a Grand Theft Auto, a port of Grand Theft Auto 4 on the Nintendo Switch, or Grand Theft Auto 5, or maybe open the door to the possibility of a remastered version of the original Red Dead Redemption? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!